about climate change. Climate change. That can be a scary subject. Some people would rather not think about it altogether. There's a reason that Al Gore titled his 2006 documentary on the subject, An Inconvenient Truth. However, when Gore first premiered his shocking exposé on climate change nearly 16 years ago, the evidence that he presented on the existence of global warming was not met with universal acceptance. In an issue of Reason magazine released shortly after the documentary's debut, journalist Ron Bailey slammed former Vice President Gore for embellishing the details of his scientific findings surrounding climate change, making the claim that while Gore was more right than wrong on the science, he supposedly devalued his message by exaggerating the details. But were they really that exaggerated? In order to find the answer, the writers here at Bestie did some research of their own, and here's what they came up with based on recent data courtesy of NASA. Before we get into the details, you should subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications by clicking the bell in order to make sure you're always up to date on Bestie's daily videos. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about climate change. Even now, 16 years after the release of Al Gore's climate change documentary, debate over the nature of climate change and global warming, or even whether it actually exists at all, continues to persist to this day. With frequent news stories pertaining to CO2 emissions, fossil fuels, and the changing environment still commonly in circulation among most major news outlets, climate change continues to be a heated topic of debate, nearly 2 decades after the former vice president brought the subject to the table. In case you're on the fence, or if there's any doubt in your mind about the existence of climate change and global warming, information collected by NASA might be useful for you in order to fully form an opinion on the matter. According to NASA, the last 650 million years or so have seen 7 cycles of glacial advance and retreat. Most recently, the last ice age in our Earth's history ended about 7,000 years ago. This was the beginning of what NASA calls the modern climate era, and it just happened to start around the same time as the start of human civilization as we know it. In most cases, previous instances of climate change in Earth's history were the result of small changes that occurred in the Earth's orbit, which resulted in changes to how much energy the planet received from the sun in the form of solar energy. However, this doesn't appear to be the case for most of the climate change here on Earth, which appears to come from an entirely different source altogether. According to NASA, there's over 95% of a chance that human activity since the mid-20th century and onward is to blame for most of the recent change in climate. And according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, scientific evidence for warming of the climate system is unequivocal. Based on information collected by NASA from several peer-reviewed scientific journals, the consensus appears to be that over 97% of climate scientists agree that the changes in our global environment over the last century are directly due to human activity, and this sentiment has been endorsed by scientific organizations all over the globe. Still not convinced? Let's get a little deeper into the causes of climate change and global warming. Based on the information provided by NASA, most scientists agree that our planet's current global warming trend is a result of the greenhouse effect, referring to warming that occurs when heat radiating from the Earth towards space becomes trapped in our atmosphere. More specifically, human activity has caused an expansion of this greenhouse effect, namely by releasing large amounts of carbon dioxide, or CO2, as well as other gases into the atmosphere that block and prevent heat from escaping. Besides CO2, other gases which humanity has caused to contribute to the greenhouse effect include water vapor, nitrous oxide, and methane. These gases can be released from a number of sources. While CO2 can be released into the atmosphere naturally from things such as erupting volcanoes, humans have greatly accelerated the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere via the activities such as deforestation and the burning of fossil fuels, like coal and oil. Methane is created and released into the atmosphere by things like decomposing garbage in landfills, rice farming, and the manure management of domestic livestock. Nitrous oxide is released by human soil cultivation and the use of commercial fertilizers, as well as fossil fuels and the production of nitric acid, among many other causes. Finally, water vapor acts as a feedback to the Earth's changing climate, as more heat means more water vapor in the atmosphere, and more water vapor means the higher possibility of clouds and precipitation. These increased levels of certain gases in our atmosphere are creating what NASA describes as a blanket around the planet Earth, which they predict will lead to continued rising temperatures, changes in precipitation and water levels, an increased sea level from melting glaciers, and warming oceans. For evidence of this greenhouse effect in action, NASA has reported that Earth's average surface temperature has risen by a little over 1.6 degrees Celsius, or 0.9 degrees Fahrenheit, since the late 19th century as a result of increased CO2 emissions, with most of that rise occurring in just the past 35 years or so. In addition, the top 700 meters of the Earth's oceans have also been shown to be getting warmer by about 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit since the year 1969, and sea levels have also risen by about 8 inches in the last century. Glaciers have also been shrinking and retreating around the world, and several parts of the globe have been experiencing decreasing snow cover in the past 50 years and shrinking ice sheets, averaging to a loss of nearly 300 billion tons of ice per year since 1993. If all that wasn't enough, the amount of extreme weather-related events is also on the rise, with the United States experiencing record-high temperatures and increasing instances of intense rainfall events. According to the science professionals at NASA, the writing is on the wall. Human activity is to blame for our changing climate and global warming. Despite this body of evidence, climate change denial appears to have gone through periods of being in vogue. In addition to Bailey, who made the argument in Reason magazine that Al Gore exaggerated the facts and statistics of climate change and global warming, other vocal critics, such as MIT atmospheric physicist Richard S. Lindzen, attacked Gore in a June 2006 issue of the Wall Street Journal, making the claim that there was no definitive consensus on the topic of global warming, and even accused Gore of biased presentation and fear-mongering for the purpose of political gain. Peter Canello from the Boston Globe made the insinuation that Gore's ulterior motives for releasing An Inconvenient Truth were to potentially bolster a second presidential campaign, and Phil Hall, a film threat, even went as far as to call Gore a blatant intellectual fraud. Man, talk about harsh. Even today, there are those who are skeptical at best about the nature of global warming and climate change, and the debate rages on as to whether or not the greenhouse effect or excessive burning of fossil fuels should really be considered a threat at all. Well, with the information laid out before you, the only remaining question to ask is this: what is your stance on the topic of climate change? After all, your opinion on the subject is yours, and yours alone to decide. And all we or anyone else can do is provide information that can help you reach a more informed and educated decision. So what do you believe when it comes to climate change and global warming? Do we have every right to be worried, or do you side with the skeptics and critics who attacked these claims, such as Bailey, Lindzen, Canello, and Hall? Whatever your stance, let us know in the comment section below, and please, let's try to keep the discussion civilized. No name-calling allowed. Enjoyed this video? Hit the like button and share with your friends. Also, subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.